Alright, I'm David Harry, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to update the firmware for an Elgato 4K-X to the latest beta firmware as of Saturday the 30th of March 2024. Now this particular update is very specifically for Mac computers. Now the one thing that I can't say is whether or not this is applicable to x86 Macs or basically Intel Macs. What it is, I don't have an Intel Mac, so unfortunately I cannot confirm what this update does for x86 Macs. However, I am on Apple Silicon, so I'm using an M1 Max MacBook Pro. So whatever I do in this video is going to be applicable for anybody who is on M1, M2 and M3. Now obviously in the future when M4 and so on and so forth gets released, there will be new variations of the firmware by that point anyway for the 4K-X. This particular beta firmware right now is very specifically to get around a particular problem that a lot of Mac users have been coming up against with their 4K-Xs. Now, just before I go any further, I'm just going to explain what this problem is or was for a lot of people. So, up until this point, myself and many other people out there have only been able to record up to 4K 30 frames per second with their 4K-Xs, when indeed that capture interface is meant to be able to go up to 120 frames per second on Mac. It can do 144 frames per second, but I'm not entirely sure if that's a Windows only feature, but we're definitely supposedly able to get 60 and 120 at 4K on our Macs. However, me and a whole bunch of other people have only been getting 4K 30. Now, my assumption for that has been because up to this point, the 4K-X only presents itself as a 5 gigabits per second UVC capture device. Now obviously at 5 gigabits per second, because of the actual bandwidth, we are only able to record up to 4K 30 frames per second when using one of the options which is 8-bit 420, such as NV12. Now obviously we can't go above 4K 30 because of the bandwidth limitation of 5 gigabits per second. If we were able to do MJPEG, we could go above that, but MJPEG most certainly isn't an option at like 5 gigabits per second for 4K anything on the systems as it currently stands. Now, just to compound things a little bit more with this, what's happened for me, although I've had these numerous problems, there have been other people out there who have been saying that they can record 4K 60 and 4K 120, even though their Macs have only been registering the actual 4K-X as being a 5 gigabits per second device. Now, that shouldn't even be possible once again, because there is definitely not enough bandwidth to record those types of video formats. However, and I think maybe this is this is just a guess on my part, but the only way I could see that this has been happening is if the Mac, although it's saying the card is only 5 gigabits per second, it actually isn't. It may well be the case that the 4K-X is actually working at 10 gigabits per second for some people, and the Mac is only saying it's 5 gigabits per second, so effectively the Mac isn't saying the correct thing. That's realistically the only thing that I can think of that makes any sense as to why some people are able to do 4K 60 and 4K 120 when their Macs are identifying their 4K-X as only a 5 gigabits per second device. Now, just one other thing that makes this even weirder. I've only been able to do 4K 30 up to a certain point because I updated my Mac OS the other week and that went to 14.4. Now, for whatever reason, and again I cannot explain why, but suddenly my 4K-X started recording 4K 60 and 4K 120, even though it still was only saying it was a 5 gigabits per second card as far as the Mac was concerned. Now again, that is just more layers of confusion confusion, because there is like absolutely nothing that I can hazard a guess at here as to why these things are being going on. So there's definitely the case that a lot of people definitely can't go above 4K 30, but then some people can. And Elgato were quite clear in saying that nothing could change until there was a new firmware. However, my 4KX started responding differently without a new firmware update. So again, I don't know what's going on with that. It's all kinds of mess that I'm not even going to try and get into. Anyways, what I'm going to do now is to update my 4KX to this new beta firmware, and let's test it out. So what we've got on the screen right now is the current Elgato capture device utility, which is version 1.2.0.579. Now, with this loaded up, as we can see here, my firmware version is 23.12.21. So that is now the very latest official firmware on the very latest version of the utility. Now, if you want to update the firmware to your 4KX, just make sure that it is connected to your Mac, but it doesn't have the HDMI cables connected. So just the 4KX on its own with the USB-C cable supplied. So to be super clear, if you want to update the firmware to your 4KX, just make sure that it is on its own connected to the Mac via the USB-C cable. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is click on Update Firmware, and it's going to tell me that there is no new firmware available because there isn't an official new firmware as of yet. So here we go, Update Firmware. As we can see there, you are up to date, so that's all good. Now what I'm going to do is just show you as far as my system information is concerned. Here is the USB interface here. There is the Elgato 4KX, and as we can clearly see here, it says up to 5 gigabits per second. However, and as I've just been saying, after I updated to 14.4 as far as Mac OS was concerned, my 4KX started recording 4K 60 and 4K 120, and as we can clearly see here, it's still saying it's only a 5 gigabits per second card. Again, I'm not going to go any deeper into that because it's all kind of a mess. Okay, so let me exit that. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to exit the utility. Now I'm just going to go to my downloads folder here, and as we can see, I've already downloaded this new version here, which is 1.3.0.622. And just to be clear, this is the beta version directly from Elgato. Now there will be a link to this file within the video description below, and like I say, it is supplied directly from Elgato. It's not a third party or anything like that. Now, to be clear about another thing here, you have to be on a minimum of macOS 14.4 in order to be able to use this particular variation of the Elgato capture device utility. So make sure you're on 14.4 before you try to even install this software. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just double click on the zip file and it should unpack it. There we go. So there's the app there. So I'm just going to double click and launch that. Now we're going to just get this little message here. Elgato capture device utility.app is an app downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? That's basically just a security measure or a security question. I think we're fairly safe on just allowing stuff from Elgato to run on our Macs. So I'm going to just open that. Okay, so that should open up. Has it gone behind? No, where's it gone? Hold on, there it is. Okay. In fact, that's the old version. Give me a second, what's going on here? Okay, so after a little bit of confusion, I've now just managed to open the new version of the software. As we can see here, Elgato Capture Device Utility 1.3.0.622. Now at this point, what we have to do is to hold down the Option key on our keyboard whilst the app is open. So there's the Option key. Now look at that. We've got this extra little button here we can switch on, which says, oh, by the way, I'm keeping my finger pressed down. Let me just release the key a sec. Okay, so that disappears. Right, so to be clear, when you press down on the Option key, you have to keep it pressed down by the looks of it. So I'm going to press Option, keep it pressed down. Now it says here, USB 10 gigabits per second. then it says requires macOS 14.4 or later. That's what I've just told you about, and obviously I'm on 14.4 anyways. So I'm going to click this over. Now, just before I do this, I've got to be really clear about something. I do not understand why we have to force this capture interface into 10 gigabits per second. This to me seems a little bit weird. It should just be something that it does anyway, which suggests a whole bunch of things to me, which I'm not going to get into in this video. Anyway, so let me just click this over. So I've switched it on. Now what we've got here, this says turn on USB 10 gigabits per second mode. Once enabled, your Elgato 4KX will no longer work with Mac OS versions earlier than 14.4. Well, I don't think that's going to be a major issue for anybody out there, because if you're going to be using 14.4, I don't think you're going to be going backwards anyway, but it's worth just mentioning that point there. So obviously once you turn on this function, the 4KX will no longer work with any other Mac OS which is older than 14.4. So just be dead clear about that. Okay, so I'm going to turn that on. Okay, allow accessory to connect. Do you want to connect Elgato 4KX to this Mac? Yes, I'm going to allow that. Okay, and then here we go, firmware version MCU 23.12.21. So as far as I can see, that's the same firmware, isn't it? So what I'm going to do here is click on update firmware. Okay, this is saying you are up to date. Okay, look, I'm getting mega confused here, right? Because I thought that that was the firmware that I was already on. Right, what I'm going to do, give me one moment, because I'm just going to double check something in the future here. So let me just dive straight back with a quick message. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going to go back to my system information here, go back to USB, select the Elgato 4KX, and yes indeed, as we can see here, it is saying up to 10 gigabits per second. So that is all really good news. Now give me one moment, because I'm just going to quickly flip over onto OBS and do a quick setup on that and do a quick capture, and then I will analyze it in my editing software and make sure that it is definitely 60. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm inside OBS, and I've also just done another quick scene setup here specifically for the 4KX after the update has been applied, because now that the update is applied, any previous scenes that had the 4KX in will not work. That's just something to be aware of. I've just seen that straight away when I've come onto OBS. However, there's a bit of a problem here. Let me get into this. So let me just get onto the video setup here. So as you can see, I've selected the correct device, so Elgato 4KX. I'm also at 3840 by 2160, so essentially UHD 4K. I'm also on the simple FPS values. I'm at 60 here. Oh, by the way, yes, I'm the output here that I'm recording is off a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra going via an original Samsung DeX station. So the output is indeed 4K and it is 60 frames per second. It's not 59.94 as far as the S24 Ultra is concerned. If this were an iPhone, it would have to be 59.94 to be correct, but 60 is correct for Android. I don't think there's any Android devices actually that do 59.94. They're all 60. Anywho, so as you can see, so that's all good so far. And then when I come down to here, input format, so I'm on MV12 obviously for 8-bit 420. If I were to select YUY2, which is a 422 chroma subsampling, unfortunately what would happen, it would in fact actually I'll just show you, it should reset itself to 50 frames per second, because at 422 with YUY2 we can't go above the 10 gigabits per second. That's 60 frames per second at 4K. So if I just flip it over onto that, I'll have to rechange some stuff here. So let me just go back to the simple frame rates. And there we go. As we can see, we can only do 50. So if I select that now, it will do YU, Y2, which is 422 8-bit. However, although the input is 60 frames per second, it will only record 50. Can't go above that. Once again, because we don't have enough bandwidth at 10 gigabits per second to do 4K 60 at 8-bit 422. Okay, so let me swing that back over to MV12. That's not actually a problem. I'm just showing people there, you know, what exactly happens if you were to select, like, you know, 422. So let me just put this back to 60. Here is the problem. Color space CS601. I haven't even got a clue what that is. If anybody out there can explain to me what CS601 is, I'd really appreciate that. However, we should be getting an option there for Rec.709, and we're not. It's got the video range corrected, limited for this particular instance of a setup. However, this color space here is totally wrong. Now, let me just OK that. Now, if I go back to this previous setup here, although we're not going to see a picture because, like I've just said, now having done the update, you have to reset your scenes because now the 4KX is technically a new device, a different device, because of the update that we've just done to it. Again, that's all well and good, that's fine. I'm not complaining about that because I was expecting to have to redo things anyway, and it's best to obviously have it updated. However, if I go to the settings in here, these were not set like this. These were set to like a proper manual setting, but as you can see there, we've got Rec.709 there is the option, or that was the option that I'd previously applied, which would be the correct option as well, because we're not doing 2020 or anything like that here, and 601 definitely wouldn't be anything that we would want to use. It's 709. However, when we come back to here, I don't know what CS601 is, though. Again, I'm getting dead confused. Somebody put me out my misery and tell me in the comments what's going on there. But we definitely don't get Rec 709. Anyway, so right now, I can't tell you if we are recording the correct color information here, because going by what we're seeing there, this is not the correct color information. However, I will just ignore that for a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a bit of gameplay here and record it, and let's just make sure that I'm able to record 4K 60. So what I'm going to do now is just cut to DaVinci Resolve Studio and just test this 4K 60 recording that I'm about to do now in the game. Okay, so as we can see here, I am now inside Resolve. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of things first to do with like the technical setup, as in what the file is and what the project is, and then what I will do is a frame advance test, and that test will show us as to whether or not we have recorded 60 frames per second or not. Okay, so the first thing to make note of here is the actual like parameters for the recording. As you can see here, ProRes 422HQ, 60 frames per second, and it is 4K UHD. So this is how I'd actually set it up with inside OBS, and I did actually use ProRes 422HQ as the recording codec as well. Now, if I just come down here and go to the project setup, as we can see, once again, the project is 4K UHD, and it is also 60 frames per second. So what we have got here is a project setup and media which both match one another, which is 4K UHD, 60 frames per second. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just tap through and do a frame advance through part of the timeline here. And when I say frame advance, this is just nudging the frame forward one frame at a time through the timeline. Now you're going to hear me tap on my keyboard, and every time I hit the keyboard, we should see the picture move for every once that I hit the keyboard. Also, as we will see here with this timecode number, this will incrementally go up one frame at a time as well. So we can definitely see from the way that the timecode increases, and as to whether or not we see any variation between frame to frame, that will tell us whether we've definitely recorded 60 frames or not. So let me just start advancing through the timeline here. Okay, so as we could clearly see and hear there, every time I hit a frame advance, the picture did change. So what that is telling us that temporally we were definitely at 60 frames per second there. So the thing that I can definitely say is yes, it is definitely recording 4K 60 frames per second, which is absolutely fantastic news. However, there is that little issue of whatever it was, CS601, whatever that was, I haven't got a clue. Now, I'm going to try and work out what's going on there as far as the color space issue is concerned, because of course we should be able to select Rec.709, which is actually the correct color space that we would want to be recording with. Now, the thing is, right now, I do not know why that problem is happening. Is that a problem with OBS? I don't know. But the weird thing is, before I did the firmware upgrade to the 4KX, I was definitely getting Rec.709 as an option for my color space setting. So it's going to look right now as if this firmware update may have given us 60 frames per second, but for some reason it is now interfering with other settings with inside OBS. So I think we're getting given something good, but then something else is screwing up. Yeah, so basically it looks like we've got one thing fixed, but now we've got another problem. Anyways, as soon as I find out what's going on with all that, I'm then going to do another video which is going to be how to set up the 4KX with OBS, and in that video that's just going to do, like, you know, my recommendations for how to set up the input properly to the output, and also what codecs to use as to whether or not you're going to be doing like direct uploading, or as to whether or not you're going to be doing, say, editing and stuff. As you can see with this particular clip here, I've recorded in ProRes 422HQ, which some people are going to think, whoa, that's a bit mad, isn't it? You're using a massively high bandwidth to record the video with. Well, the thing is, with something like this, I record everything with ProRes 422HQ, and then what I'll do after I finish my editing, I will then use a much smaller bandwidth with something like H.265 or another codec, which is then more suitable for, say, uploading for the likes of YouTube or any of the streaming platforms. But anyway, like I say, I'll be doing a few videos as to the recommendations for the setup for capturing with the 4KX and OBS. Anyways, if you have found whatever it is that I've done in this video to have been useful, and if this is the kind of thing that you're into, then you might want to keep an eye on my channel as well, because I am definitely going to start doing more videos to do with, say, recording, game recording, streaming, setups and stuff like that, very specifically to do with Apple Silicon and the likes of OBS and various bits of hardware. And to be honest, I've actually got quite a bit of Elgato hardware as well, so I'll start covering a lot of topics to do with game capture and what have you. So defo keep an eye on my channel for that stuff. Anyways, if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. A sub to the channel would be absolutely brilliant. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.